Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Summer Smith with ABC 7 News, joined by local attorney Alexis Rosenberg with Rosenberg Law PA. And we are talking about the unfortunate situation, the school shooting in Georgia. So sad, Alexis.
So sad. It's a sad on all to the families that have lost their family members, as well as just what's coming out about the shooter's life.
All right. So the latest, though, the shooting suspect, who is 14 years old, shot 4 people, 2 teachers, 2 students. Now his father has since been arrested. I'm going to show you a picture of him here. This seems a little shocking for a lot of people that may be just learning about this situation. If the 14-year-old is a suspected shooter, why would the father be charged and arrested?
Well, if you remember in the Michigan shooting case, the parents were actually convicted. They were convicted of manslaughter, both the mother and the father. So what's coming out is there's a lot of, because this is a good question, because people are saying, are we responsible for every act our child ever does? But what's coming out in the recent days is that there was an investigation by the FBI that this child had potentially made threatening allegations last year, as well as this father bought this child an AR-15 for Christmas.
An AR-15, 14 years old, possibly 13 back then. So they're investigating that this dad bought the young man we're looking at right here, the suspected shooter right here, 14 years old right now, a gun for Christmas.
Right, who does that?
Right.
I mean, that's well, apparently he did, but I mean, really, was that good judgment? I don't know what the age to buy a gun in Georgia, but I would suspect it's not 14.
Okay, so you think that played into then, obviously, him being charged right now?
So what he's been charged with is second-degree murder, which is that someone died and he was committing child abuse, which is a little odd, but that is a second-degree murder, as well as we have involuntary murder, which means that due to his reckless actions, somebody died. And I think they're going to have from what has come out, a pretty easy case for that. Apparently, based on these charges, because he was also charged with 8 counts of child cruelty, there's going to come out some, allegations with regard to this child's home life and how he was being treated. But there has been put out there that the mother posted, because they were separated, because there's been a question, why wasn't the mother also charged? They were separated, that she posted something about how she finally left her abusive husband. So there must have been this ongoing abuse going on in the house, or the allegation of it.
And you bring up the mother. Through research, we've learned that the mother has been in and out of jail. This boy, who's 14 years old, did not grow up in the most positive environment. Will that be, well, let's talk first. He's 14 years old and being charged as an adult. Is that legally, it just seems a little bizarre that he'd be charged as an adult and he's only 14 years old.
So your listeners are going to come at me because I've already gotten a lot of pushback. I do not think that a child should be charged as an adult. I think if they can't enter into a contract, we don't think they're old enough to drink, vote, all of those things that come with when you turn 18 and 21 years old.
Right.
I don't think it should be a line that should be moved back and forth. Now, because he is a minor, he cannot be sentenced to death. It's unconstitutional, and that has been found. So it would be life imprisonment, but still.
That's what he faces.
Right.
Okay, what is the difference? Can we explain what is the difference if they would have kept him as a minor, a juvenile, versus changing it, upgrading it as an adult? What's the difference there?
So, I mean, they can't, a juvenile, they can't keep in for life. Generally, it's to 21. It can vary based on states and circumstances, but it's generally to 21 that they can house them in a youth facility. So first they would be in a youth facility. So what happened this morning in court was when they had basically made it official they were going to try him as an adult, he was in a youth detention center. He has now been moved, or is in the process of being moved, to an adult jail.
14.
At 14.
Okay.
So that's for starters. And if he's convicted as an adult, he would be housed, imprisoned in an adult prison.
Wow.
So, I mean, there's a big difference now they can try to fight it. They can get his defense team can try and fight and get them to change that decision and try to get it back down. Under these circumstances, I mean, that's going to be a tough road.
That's what I was going to ask you. Is there a chance once this continues, the investigation continues, that they could change it back? Or once this decision has been made, he will continue to be charged as an adult?
Well, being charged and then going on trial, are two different things. So they could file motions to try to do that, which I suspect they will do. Okay. I don't know, because this is a school shooting, if they're going to that's going to be successful. I would say probably not, unfortunately. But there are a lot of people, a lot of your listeners, when I have made this comment on other cases, really believe that if you have a crime where somebody's being murdered, that they should, no matter what their age is, pretty much be charged as an adult.
Okay, and the boy's name is Colt Gray. He's been charged with 4 counts of murder. He's accused, like you said, of using the semi-automatic assault rifle to kill 2 students and 2 teachers. This happened Wednesday. This is just changing, and we're seeing, though, like you brought up the case in Michigan, parents are being held accountable. So immediately, they didn't even wait. Now, in the Michigan situation, that took a little longer. This father was brought into custody and arrested immediately. Do you think moving forward, more parents are going to be held accountable in these school shootings? I mean, obviously, we have a problem here in the United States. Yep. They're happening frequently. These children are getting their hands on these weapons. At 14, he couldn't go and purchase a weapon on his own.
And if you remember with that case that you just brought up, Summer, that was the same situation. I also think it was a Christmas present. I could be wrong about that, but I do think the father purchased the gun for him for a Christmas present or a birthday present as well. I think what's happening is that we're realizing as a society that parents should have some accountability for their children's actions when it's this egregious. Now, do I think that if the circumstances were that there was no sign that this child, could commit this, or if there weren't guns in the house that you, as a parent, they had access to, I don't necessarily think they would be charging. I think that what's different about these 2 cases is there was a notice of an issue to a parent. The parent had firearms, and the parent was making them very accessible, as well as in both of these cases, they purchased the firearm that the crime was actually committed with.
Right, which is huge. So what will happen now moving forward? Both are being charged. Will they go to court together, or will this will be handled separately, I imagine? They're gonna most likely, the attorneys, they're gonna have separate attorneys, and they're going to go on separate tracks and not be tried together, is most likely how it's going to happen. I wouldn't see why an attorney would want, on either side, would want to try that, because really the father, unfortunately, from a defense strategy, is pretty much going to have to allege that the son went solo, and they're going to have to rely on the opposite side. The shooter is going to have to really home in on the fact that there was this horrible, egregious, family life that he was in at the time. And I wouldn't be surprised if they threw in some mental health issues as well. I was watching the Casey Anthony documentary last night. I don't know if you've watched that yet, but you made me think of that, because she is blaming her family for everything, the horrible childhood she had. I had never heard that angle, a little bit of it, but with time passing, which this young man could likely, or the 14-year-old's attorneys could likely do. And look, she was found not guilty.
Well, Casey Anthony actually, when that trial was going on, was blaming the father. And I remember he was very heartbroken about the whole situation. Apparently, she has just moved out of the state and is dating someone with 2 children.
Oh. Well, at the time of this documentary, her family, she said, were her attorneys that represented her. They kind of taken her in. So I know we're kind of getting sidetracked with that, but it's just sometimes you don't know the outcome, what the jury's going to decide. So the 14-year-old faces, because of his age, that was interesting what you told me, he won't face, he faces life in prison.
Right.
What about the father? What is the harshest penalty or sentencing that he could face?
I believe in Georgia, because it varies state to state. I think for those charges, now remember, they can be consecutive or concurrent, meaning they can run one after the other at the same time. I think it's 30 years. If he is that. Now remember, they could do lessers and stuff. The manslaughter, not the manslaughter, the involuntary murder is obviously a lesser of a charge than the second degree murder.
Right.
And for the second degree murder, they're really going to have to home in, because with that in Georgia, that's it's really connected to that child abuse. And so we're going to have to hear, where it's going to come out, to what extent that child abuse was going on in order for the prosecution to get that. Now with the involuntary, really it just has to show he acted recklessly. That is a low standard. You know, that he acted recklessly, which I would think that a lot of people on a jury would say buying an AR-15 for a 14-year-old was reckless behavior, and then somebody died. And so, I mean, we know people died, and they died with that gun. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if a plea is offered, a plea is not taken, because I think that the defense, this is going to be a tough case for them.
Do you think that this is going to be a big issue? Obviously, it already is, but I mean, we have the election coming up, not to get political or anything, but just legally, some laws might be changing. I know there's a push both sides, but people lost their lives. There was another school shooting. Will this happen again? Probably.
I think when school shootings happen, there's a lot of talk that starts. Right. It gets us talking. But like you said, you know, I think there was something like over 100 mass shootings this year, and a mass shooting in the United States just this year, we're only, what, 9 months in, is anybody over 4 people and that are deceased, and not counting the shooter. So that's a lot. I think school shootings do bring a lot of attention. I hope that finally, you know, our elected officials really get fed up and do something. I personally do believe that no one needs a semi-automatic weapon. I don't understand why a child, and I don't think that you need it to hunt, for the hunters that are big proponents of guns.
And it's the mental health issue too. We can't just blame the guns. I mean, this boy, he obviously had issues. They had investigated him a year before. Where was the help for him? He was lost. How many of those children are out there like that? It's just, I blame the parents for that. You know, he was lost.
Yeah, the mental health issue is a big thing, and a lot of the people that are pro-gun say it's a mental health issue, not a gun thing. My personal opinion, it's a combination of the two. Right. Both of them need to be addressed. But yeah, he obviously was lost. He obviously was crying out. Yeah. You know, we're also going to hear, you know, why didn't the FBI at the time think that there was enough to bring charges against him?
I think of that. Did that fail? That failed those families that lost their lives. He was investigated a year ago. I guess they said the weapons were locked up correctly, though, and they couldn't do anything. But I'd feel like, yes, you could have done something if that was my child that lost their life or loved one.
I think that the FBI, from what I've read, and we're going to hear more, was that they were having a hard time proving that the post came from him. Okay. I think that was the issue, and that is why they tried to have this conversation, it's my understanding, with the father to say, put him on alert. And apparently what's coming out is that the father was a little in denial, no, my child. And it is, that's a hard, you know, that's a hard pill to swallow for any parent.
Right.
But I think what's going to come out is the level of alleged abuse that was happening in this household. And remember, there's 2 other children, by the way. I believe there's 2 daughters as well that were living with the mother and didn't move in with the father during the separation.
So we're going to be learning a lot about this situation moving forward.
Yeah.
Okay. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to add to this? Do you think they'll move quickly, or will this sit a while? What do you think?
Well, it's going to really depend on the defense strategy. Also, if there's some plea agreements, whether they're, you know, offers, whether they're going to agree to that. So there's a lot of different factors. I believe that they're going to be back into court, the father, I think, at the beginning of December. So we'll see from there. You know what? I wouldn't be surprised if the shooter actually took a plea. The father, I mean, you never know. He may want to go go to trial, because this is new. I mean, we've only really had one other case out of a different state than this one where the parents were being charged for something like this.
So sad. Our hearts go out to the victims' families, and just a tragedy, another tragedy. Yeah. All right, Alexis, thank you for that insight. We learned a lot. Appreciate it, and we'll be talking to you soon about this case and many more. All right, thank you, Alexis. And thank you, everyone, for joining us from our live desk, and we hope you all have a great rest of your afternoon. Thanks for tuning in.